Welcome to a brand new episode of IDTALK4ED Live, the show for the unsung heroes of education. I'm your host, Sarfo-Mensah. If this is your first time tuning in to the podcast, I welcome you and I hope that you return for future episodes. And if you're a returning viewer or listener of the podcast, I welcome you back. And I hope that tonight's episode is one that you find informative, enlightening, and insightful. So today's episode is a very special one that you may find introspective. We're going to be talking about love, yes, love, but we're also going to talk about how that love translates to the racial literacy work that we have to do as educators. So we're going to try to bring those two worlds together in this conversation tonight. And who better to lead us in this discussion than one of the most dynamic and most beautiful spirits that you ever come across. This sister is a scholar. She's a poet. She's a writer. And her official title is the Associate Professor of English Education at Columbia University's Teachers College. If you don't know her, you need to get familiar. But without further ado, I want to bring on the good sister, Dr. Yolanda Sealey-Ruiz, to the podcast to talk with us about her work and her most recent book, Love from the Vortex, which is a beautiful read. You all need to go get a copy, but we're going to really dig right into all that. So let's bring the good doctor on.
Hello, brother. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. I am really, and I say this with my heart, I am so happy to be here. I have been watching your work for a while and grateful for just, the way that you serve, the way that you challenge, the way that you are bringing us together around conversations that matter in our lives. And so it is my honor to be here with you. Yes, that's how I'm feeling. I'm feeling honored.
It's an honor to even have you here. And it's because of individuals like yourself that I continue to push the envelope to have these conversations, because we all need to use our platforms to have these conversations, especially now with all of the racial and battle fatigue that we're all experiencing, especially Black and brown folks, with every life lost. It's just difficult to sometimes, push forward with the work, but we have to remind ourselves that our greatest revolutionaries also had to deal with the racial and battle fatigue. I mean, Fannie Lou Hamer said, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." So
that's right.
She literally said that. So if my ancestors are saying this and they're still persisting and doing what they need to do to do this work, I can't make any excuses, because I have privileges now that they didn't have when they were doing it. So,
wow,
we got to do it.
You know something, brother? Can I respond to that quickly? I used to always say, I do not have dogs biting at my feet. I do not have crosses burning in my yard. And those were just a few of the external things that they lived with. And so if they loved me enough so that I could be here, I have to love the future generation enough and love and respect what they gave to me enough to continue the journey, to continue the battle. So I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. And it doesn't mean that we don't pause and take care of ourselves the moments that we get really tired. And that's why we need the network. But revolutionaries need to rest. They need love. They need all of that too in order to keep on keeping on.
Right. And that's why when I came across your book, Love from the Vortex, it was what I needed. And I posted about this and I said, this is what I need, because we read so many academic books, especially you always have to read and research in order to enhance the work that you're doing.
Right.
And we're going to get into that a little later on. So sometimes when you're able to read a book that doesn't force you to have to think a whole lot, well, I mean, this one does, but just in general, sometimes we need that departure, that mental departure from the pain and from even the anti-Blackness that we constantly experience in our lives that surrounds us, in the cloak of, white supremacy. Like we have to.
Yes.
So I'm just glad that I was able to just read it and just get my mind off of everything for a little bit. Because we need that.
I'm so glad you said that. One of the reviews on Amazon is Brother Dr. Todd Craig. He's a professor in New York City at Medgar Evers College. And I remember he wrote a review early on because the book came out in March 2020, last year, like right as COVID was kind of starting to rage through the US. And I remember very distinctly having planning, the book launch party. I was going to use the historic Weeksville Center in Brooklyn, one of a really very beautiful and historic landmark of hosting 2 homes on this land of the first freed enslaved people. And so for me, that was the, freedom, liberation, which is what this book symbolizes. Loving Black people, being a Black woman, that was the perfect space for me. But I remember having to cancel. I also remember Dr. Todd's review and him saying very similar, Kwame, to what you just said, that here we are in the midst of this craziness and we had not yet seen where it was taking us. And we need to pause for love. And he presented Love from the Vortex as an opportunity for him to just pull away from all of the chaos and the violence that we had been experiencing as Black folks during that time, and certainly now with the COVID. And we know how the COVID hit our communities, Latinx communities, and First Nations communities in devastating ways.
Wow. Yes. But we getting deep already. But yeah, we more than warmed up right now. So let's go right in.
Okay.
So first question that I ask all my guests is to tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you into the field of education.
Yolanda Sealey-Ruiz, associate professor at Teachers College. I knew from the time I was 13 that I was going to get this thing called a PhD. Didn't exactly make the connection to education per se. I just remember seeing this beautiful Black woman on television talking about something in such a sophisticated manner. And I thought, you know what? I want to be like her. So actually at 13, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. And then I might have seen this sister at maybe around 15. So education is always something that was in my heart. I think I was born to be an educator. Of course, I was told by adults, including adults in my own family, my father, that there's no money in education. And I think that swayed me because adults that we look up to, adults that we love, we're influenced by them. So after college, I decided to go into corporate America. And my first 13 years of my professional job was in corporate America. But this desire to teach was just haunting me. And so I began teaching high school at night. So that's how I entered the field of education, paying attention to my heart, to this deep desire, and finding a way to make money through corporate, but also to meet my desires of wanting to become a teacher. And I taught at night for a number of years.
Wow. That's amazing. And you are a Black woman in the academy, which has many layers, many layers. And I've been honored to have so many sisters come on to this podcast to share their journeys, the ups and downs, and just be transparent about that. So I know in previous interviews that you've done, you've shared about some of the trials and tribulations you experience to your journey towards becoming the doctor that you already were before you got the actual paper. I want to make sure we affirm that, right? But I want you to really walk us through that journey of becoming Dr. Yolanda Sealey-Ruiz and what are some ups and downs that you experience. And I know for Black women in general, there is sexism that occurs within the academy. The racism, of course, is obvious. And we talk about Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw's theory of intersectionality as it relates to Black women. That very much is applicable to the plight of some of our sisters in academia to this day. So I really want you to really expound upon that and how it got you to where you are now.
Oh, Brother Kwame, that you just spoke a word right there. All the truth, certainly intersectionality theory. Thank you, Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw. I was just looking at some of her videos yesterday. I actually teach a class in China. I teach high school students and graduate students, and I'm teaching them about anti-Blackness in China and around the world, having them really think deeply about what they've been taught about Black people. We're certainly engaging with intersectionality in terms of, for them, what is it like to be, this week we're actually talking about gender and girls and women. What is it like to be a Chinese woman in China and also in America? So Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw's theory is really foundational to me engaging with these students on another continent. And so my journey, I'll tell you honestly, I had no idea what it meant to publish or perish. Again, I saw those 3 letters at the age of 15, but I had no idea what that meant. And going through my doctoral program at NYU, I think when I met my mentor, Dr. Suzanne Carruthers, who was a professor at CUNY for a number of years and then had come over to NYU, she was a huge force in helping me begin to see what it meant to be a Black woman in the academy. But again, this being all new, and you don't really know, Brother Kwame, what you don't know. And a lot of times we have to be able to study something, look at something, and formulate the questions. But it's difficult to ask certain questions when you really don't know what's going on. So I think she prepared me as much as she could while I was a doctoral student in a predominantly white university at NYU. And I started actually as a research associate at the NYU Center for Urban Education under Pedro Noguera. And it was really serendipity, I want to say, but whatever your path is that God plays out, their path is going to happen. So I was a research associate under Pedro Noguera, and one day I designed a study for Ossining High School, talking to parents, to students, to administrators, to teachers. And one day during an interview, I realized that I was sitting across from my practicum teacher at Teachers College. I'm born and raised in the Bronx. I went to NYU, I went to Teachers College, then I went back to NYU for my doctorate. And so here I am, this research associate, and she identifies herself. And we connect, we finish the interviews, and she says, you really should think about coming to Teachers College to do some teaching for us. And this is what I want to tell you. When it is your destiny, it is your destiny. So I told her, nah, I'm good. I'm doing this work at NYU. She passes my name to her colleague, who was also my professor about 18 years ago. That colleague, senior colleague, calls my house, invites me to teach a course. I'm like, nah, I'm good. Thank you. I'm okay. I'm teaching at NYU. I'm doing this research. I'm good. So that's twice. Then I get into this huge argument with my boss, not Pedro, another boss that I will not name. And I said, you know what? This is enough. Let me, if they call me again, I'm going. Guess what, Brother Kwame? They called me a 3rd time. And on that 3rd time, I said, yes, I'm interested. So I left my relatively stable job as a research associate and adjunct professor at NYU, and I took an 18-month position as another research associate helping this program with their accreditation. And after a year, 2 positions opened up because folks had not gotten tenure in my department for 25 years. Not wow. Black, white, male, female, trans. No one had received tenure in 25 years. And so these 2 positions opened up. I applied for one of them. Mark Lamont Hill, Brother Mark Lamont, applied for the
Temple
other one.
In the house.
Yes, Temple in the house.
Building.
That's right. Powerful, beautiful, brilliant brother. So grateful he was my colleague for those years. He got one position. And when I tell you with one publication, and we know that the Academy is all about pubs, I had one publication, but I had multiple years of teaching, and 25 students wrote letters on my behalf. And brother, that's how I got the job.
Wow.
Isn't that something?
It's amazing how the universe works sometimes. It's just amazing.
When it's in your favor, it's in your favor. So I'm always very clear. So when I got that position, I was very grateful to God. I said, you know what, God, you got me here. One thing I'm going to do is what I do well. I will serve students. And the very first year, I started teaching high school at night again. And I made sure that I served those students. And honestly, that is my priority, my teaching and serving students. This is why I've been on over 100 dissertations, to support students to get through. So that's my story.
Wow. And going back to the 3 times that you were offered this position, was there a little bit of imposter syndrome that caused you to not grab onto the opportunity the first couple times? Or it was just, I just like the stability that I have at NYU and I just want to stay here?
That's exactly what it was, brother. It was, I felt very comfortable and stable. And that position was going to be an 18-month position. So I said, here I am at NYU, even though it was a position that a lot was based on the grants that we received and the contracts we received. NYU is such a formidable name. Those grants just kept rolling in. So I knew that I had a secure position, even though technically it was on soft money of working for a center. But what I was going to walk in at TC, they were very upfront with me. This is an 18-month position. Are you willing to take it? And so I had a child, a family, taking care of family members. I really couldn't, I thought to myself, I couldn't afford to do this until I had that argument with my boss, my colleague, and we really had been at odds for the time that I had been there. And it was just time for me to leave. So no imposter syndrome. No, I would, if it were, I would admit it.
Okay. Just want to make sure, but ooh. So you get to Teachers College, which I believe is becoming the Mecca. I believe it's the Mecca of Black academia, because just the people who come out of here. Obviously, we know about yourself. We know about good brother Dr. Chris Emden and so many others. Even good friend Dr. Courtney Rose, who was at Teachers College, did her doctorate there.
Love her. Yes.
Another phenomenal sister. I just want to know, I feel like y'all should just do a documentary on just Teachers College, just the Black Academy experience, because so many great minds come from this one institution. I mean, don't you ever marvel at it sometimes?
Wow, brother, something? Actually, I do. When I think about even going back, like Shirley Chisholm, when I think about the legacy of Dr. Edmund Gordon, who's 99, I think might have turned 100 years old, and the activity of his mind and how he's still involved in TC. You're right, Dr. Courtney Rose, Dr. Edmund Ajupong. I think about my other colleagues, Dr. Erica Walker, Felicia Mensah. It is something to marvel at. And having just experienced online convocation a few weeks ago, having folks like Stacey Abrams show up as the graduation speaker, having colleagues like Mark Gooden and Sonia Horsford, you're absolutely right. You're causing me to pause for a moment. That might be something that we should look into. And of course, it's your idea. So if it ever goes anywhere, or if you take it up, I think that that's brilliant. Wow.
I just think it'll be powerful because you have so many Black folks who are currently going through this rigorous process of getting their doctorate. They're doing a dissertation, they're doing a lit review. They're having these barriers that are placed in front of them, either because of life or because they just have an advisor that's just not supportive of their work. These are stories that I hear.
Yes.
So to be able to have that story be shared with the universe, I just think it'll be powerful.
Wow, Brother Kwame. Wow, I'm going to sit with that. And again, if there's any traction or motion, if you don't initiate it first, certainly that idea, we have it right here on tape. So we got the proof right here that was your brainchild. And I think it would be remarkable. Yes. Thank you for that pause.
So let's continue with just the work you're doing at TC. So you do work with teacher candidates, so you're a teacher educator.
Yes.
But you also refer to yourself as an interrupter. So
I prefer that.
Yes. So I want to know from you, as it relates to the archaeology of the self, which I believe aligns very much with my philosophy behind Identity Talk. Because I believe with Identity Talk, you have to know who you are, and you have to know your journey and your life experiences in order to be the teacher you need to be, the agent of change you need to be for your students. And the talk in Identity Talk is about the internal dialogue that you have to have, which also aligns with the deep excavation that you talk about within archaeology of the self. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to just share an overview of what that is and why is it imperative for teachers to engage in this self-work before they even get into the classroom.
Brother, thank you for that question. And I think you already started in a beautiful way, like defining it. But quite simply, archaeology of the self is one of 6 components of what I call racial literacy development. And what's most important about archaeology of the self is seeing the self as the tool to do the work, the identity work that you were talking about, right? Identity talk and then identity action. And so it is really doing self-excavation around the very deep biases, ideologies, and stereotypical thoughts that we hold about ourselves and certainly about the students that we serve. So that's really archaeology of the self, of doing this deep work. Some folks do it through therapy or beginning in therapy. Others do it in schools through professional learning. You know, some of the professional learning that I offer, people do it in different ways. But you really beautifully started defining it. The need to do that deep work. Where do these biases live within you? As my mentor, Dr. Suzanne Carruthers, would always ask. And what about those biases and those ideas that interrupt you seeing your students as the full humans they are? And a lot of us do not admit it. We will not say, oh, I have this bias against Black children, but everything in your behavior, from the way you look at them to the way you grade their papers shows that there is a deep bias. And so that work must be, that excavation has to happen when you've decided to, as Lisa Delpit would say, serve other people's children. We have to do better. We have to do better, and it has to start with the self. And that's what sustains it, because you can go through all of this professional learning around the beauty and the power of culturally responsive, sustaining, relevant pedagogy. But if your heart isn't ready to accept it and your head isn't ready to accept it, it will not sustain. It will just be another PD session. So this is my hope, to really get at the heart and the head of the educator. And that even if they choose to leave education, whatever career they go in afterwards, you are going to be engaging with human beings. So where's your heart with that? So that's the genesis, the hope, the desire behind Arc of Self. Thank you for putting up the pyramid. Always giving props to Dr. Angela Costa for helping me visualize this. But these are the 6 components, deeply rooted in critical love, which is a profound ethical commitment for the communities we're serving. But I do not believe that we can get at that love, practice that critical humility, engage in critical reflection, explore historical literacy, and ultimately interrupt without engaging in the archaeology of the self. The self is the tool to get through all of this so that we can be the teachers we need to be, particularly for Black and brown children.
And I love the fact that in this pyramid, you have the critical love and the critical humility as the foundation for this work, because as I've talked to many educators, one thing I always tell people is if we're going to be engaging in anti-racist work that's going to combat anti-Blackness, work that's going to combat anti-Asian racism,
yes,
or settler colonialism as it relates to our indigenous brothers and sisters.
Yes.
The critical love has to be there. And it's not, and it's love in terms, and love and humility, because to be humble is to acknowledge your mistakes and your missteps.
Yes.
And to be able to say, hey, like, I'm sorry. Let me hold myself accountable and do this learning that I need to do in order to reframe my paradigm on these different topics. So I want to know from you, and obviously it shows in your pyramid, what role should love play in this work that we do as culturally relevant and anti-racist practitioners?
Love, brother, is the core, the key, the foundation, because what we are seeing, and people may not call it hate, but we definitely see there is a disdain for Black and brown children, and most specifically coming from white teachers. There is a lack of love and appreciation for their communities, for their legacy. And in part, that is because that's the lack of historical literacy. We are not taught about the greatness and the brilliance of Black engineers and scholars and teachers. And I mean, anything that has been created or impacted this world, and I almost want to say the global world, you can probably bet that there's a Black person behind it. And when I say Black, I'm talking about diaspora, right? The diaspora, that there is a Black mind likely behind it. And I mean, I could go through 20, 40 different inventions, from the cell phone, Henry T. Sampson, to the refrigerator, to the traffic light, all Black minds. And so that is not taught. And so these teachers are going through schools. They're not being taught Black genius and Black joy and Black brilliance. What they are being taught and see are these stereotypes, what racism and white supremacy has created. And so by the time they get in front of Black children, what comes to mind? All of those negative stereotypes, the things they can't do. And so, that is the work, that the historical literacy piece is key, but the love and the humility is also key, because for me, education is, can you love the child or the children in front of you in the way that you would love your own children? Biological, foster children, children in your own families. If you cannot answer yes to that, for me, I want to know why you're teaching. And don't tell me it's because, you love books and, you love writing. Don't tell me about those external forces. I'm talking about the intrinsic motivation that's connected to the emotion, like love and loving someone else. And as you said, being humble enough to recognize when it is not love that is at play, that it is the stereotypical thoughts that you've been raised with, that you've been conditioned to believe, that's at play when you're interacting with Black and brown children or with poor white children. So you have to be humble enough to recognize your limitations. Even if you've been a teacher for 30 years, you still don't know everything. There's still limitations in terms of you meeting your students' needs, and being humble enough to recognize that. And so for me, love sort of covers over what we say, a multitude of sins when we talk biblically. Love really opens up space for understanding in a very deep way.
And just staying on racial literacy, when we think about the way that many of our teacher education programs are structured, traditionally, there is a lack of racial literacy within those programs. But yet, these are the programs that we need to go through in order to get certified, in order to be highly qualified, if we're going to use the NCLB language or the ESCA language. Like, I had to go through that process. I had to learn about Jean Piaget. I had to learn about Lev Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. I had to learn about Edward Skinner's behaviorist theory, which I all know. And I did it because that's what I needed to do to get the paper, to get the certificate. But in retrospect, I realized that I wasn't learning about myself. You know, I was just going through the motions to just get the score that I needed on my praxis test to get my license. And so I'm wondering what is it going to take for us to change the way that we view good teaching or good pedagogy in our practice? Because if we're centering these westernized theorists and we're looking at everything through this one lens, right? How can we continue to recruit culturally responsive teachers in our districts and really center their experiences within their teacher development?
Brother, you just got to the root of the problem right there. We have to go to the source of it. You have to go to the root of it. And that is that deep sort of social, I almost want to say like how we're inculcated to believe these things. We're socialized to believe the voices that matter and what's important. And I know you had Dr. Goldie on your show, and she talked very specifically, and we've written an article with 2 other colleagues about the contributions of Mary McLeod Bethune, of Clara Muhammad, of Fannie Jackson Coppin, of all of these amazing Black women who set up and created schools and periods of our history that was almost impossible to do so. And so you want to learn from those women who have created things against all odds in support of people, i.e. Black people, who it was actually laws against them reading and writing and learning how to write their name. So when you want to look at sort of how do we help students get from one level to the other, you have to deal with models from people who help to bring up people from one level to the other, bringing folks up from enslavement and into intellectualism. Black women have done that work. And yet Black women are so clearly erased, they're invisible in teacher education programs. And so if we're going to keep with the same curriculum, keep with the same folks, these are the education scholars, Piaget, Bronfenbrenner, many that I learned, and there are some worthy things to learn from that. I'm not saying that, but why does it have to be just that? And particularly when you are preparing white teachers to teach Black and brown children, and Latinx and Black and Asian teachers to teach Black and brown children, there has to be more diversity. There has to be more inclusion, and diversity in terms of diversity of thought, diversity of who are the scholars that we are reading, who are we valuing, and that has to happen in teacher education programs around the world. It has to be appreciated and pushed forward in these organizations like AERA and LRA and NCTE and NCSS. All of the organizations that are connected with teacher education need to be on the same page. And then, of course, when that happens, we will begin to see different teacher assessments. We will begin to see different curriculum. Right now, you know, we're just kind of doing it as an add-on, as a pushing through. We need to dig at the root and plant those seeds so that they could flourish and grow. You hit the nail on the head. But you know what? We know that's the truth. We keep on going because it's either we stop, and if we stop, we know that the status quo will just continue. So we have to keep pushing and getting in any way that we can, in the hopes that one day it'll be more systemically changed, because that's what we need. We need systemic change, right, within teacher education programs. And then we'll begin to see things shift in schools. Until then, we continue to do this work in the way that we do it.
And I also want to add the importance of intersectionality again. And you talked about this too. The fact that now it's not just about race. Now we realize that in every group within that BIPOC acronym, there are very distinct differences within each. And none of them are monoliths. And we could talk about that till our face gets blue. But what I want to know is, how does the intersectional identities within the BIPOC community impact work that we have to do as educators and leaders in school districts? Because that also plays a role in this racial literacy development work that needs to be done. Because we can't just talk about race. We have to talk about ethnicity. We have to bring up ableism. We're going to have to bring up also gender identity, right? All these other components play a role, and they shape the way that we view the world. So how does that influence the work that we do?
Well, that's a brilliant question. And if I think I'm understanding it, as I think of our BIPOC administrators and teachers, in terms of their role in the anti-racist work, I want to start by saying they need to do their own healing, that there needs to be work done around some of the internalized racism, some of the internalized depression. You brought up earlier imposter syndrome, some of that might exist, because sometimes we'll find some of our BIPOC teachers and staff and administrators, they engage in kind of white racism. Not all racism is white. Let me just say that, because of the way that power structure has been created. But they engage in this kind of racist ideology with themselves and with their children. And so this is why we need like comprehensive professional development. And this is where affinity grouping or groups will be important as well. That as we do this work around anti-racism and pushing school districts towards being anti-racist in their curriculum, in the ethos of their school, and their hiring practices, all of those important things, that we also take the time for BIPOC educators, staff, and so forth, to engage in affinity groups to discuss how they're being impacted, to discuss how they're being influenced, to have time to unravel and dismantle and disengage from what the system is telling them about children that look like them and telling them about themselves. So it has to, for me, healing is a piece of it. That's why I say if we start with critical love, with humility, with reflection, it really lays the groundwork for this kind of work to happen. But BIPOC folk definitely need affinity group and professional learning that is structured just for them, and not always kind of integrated professional learning. And sometimes white folks, they need their affinity grouping, because oftentimes, and they may not mean it, because they've been socialized to believe this, what comes out of their mouths can be so hurtful to a person of color hearing that in a public setting. And so they need to have spaces where they're kind of talking through with the right facilitators to challenge them and to help shift their thinking, which will eventually help shift their behaviors. And that cannot always be done in, I don't think, mixed race settings. And I'm thinking the same thing of our BIPOC in terms of non-gender conforming identities. Like, we need to start talking about this. This is racial literacy, having this language and being able to constructively talk about all of what we need without people feeling offended and feeling like they're being, shut out of something. No, we're trying to heal ourselves so that we can stop exacting harm on the children in our care.
No, absolutely. And just to add to your point about having mixed race groups, when having these discussions, that's where the fragility comes out. From white folks, the right to comfort, and all these other characteristics of white supremacist culture,
right?
That we know about. They just manifest themselves in those type of settings. So that's why affinity grouping is so important. But to continue on this stream of thought, I know that you started the Racial Literacy Roundtable series at Teachers College a little over a decade ago, and I know it's evolved over time, right? So I want to know from you, how has it evolved over the past 10 plus years, and have any of those conversations influenced or maybe changed the work that you've done around racial literacy development?
Oh my gosh. First of all, can I say these questions are on the money? On the money. Yes, it has evolved from the racial literacy roundtables to what I call the racial literacy project. And within that project are the roundtables, which middle school, high school, international scholars, master's students, doctoral students, teachers, community members have engaged, mostly the Columbia University community, in conversations around not just race, but race and sexual orientation and masculinity and multilingualism, what the body teaches us. The topics over these past, and it's been 12 years, more than a decade, have been addressing all of those social markers, those markers that make us beautiful, that make us unique. And yet, sometimes for some of us, often we catch the most hell in society and in schools based on those markers. And so racial literacy roundtables has always been a somewhat informal space where we come together, we eat, and there's a facilitator that engages the community. About maybe 5 years after the roundtables, maybe 6 years after, I started the lecture series, which are not lectures at all. They're actually performances. And so I've had teachers who are stand-up comics. I have had professors who have shared their stories of trauma and triumph. I have had actors who've done one-man shows around the school to prison pipeline. I have had community organizers to come and talk about racism and homelessness and how it manifests in communities, homelessness manifests in communities of color, and how it impacts the education of homeless children. So that's been the racial literacy lecture series, all performances. And then in the last maybe 3 or 4 years with my work with Dr. Angela Costa, it has really, another layer has been added about healing circles. And those healing circles have manifested in the Archaeology of the Self Institute, where we gather folks to really look deeply at their biases around race and class and gender and how that plays out in their sphere of influence. So we don't always just attract teachers. The bulk of our participants are educators, but we also get folks from the business world, and then those who are kind of in between and changing their professions. So it has evolved. And then, of course, it has changed me, because as much as to focus on archaeology of the self and doing racial literacy development work, as much as it is very personal, it is also done in community. So each time I do this work in community, even talking with you right now about it, gives me a deeper understanding or creates new questions in my mind about where this work needs to go. So it has changed me, and it will continue to change me.
Wow, and it's just been beautiful how it's evolved to what it is now, and it's still evolving.
Mm-hmm.
But wow, we've been talking a lot about education. I'll talk about love.
Let's talk about love, which is,
let's talk about love.
Love manifests in education for those of us like us who are teachers. I mean, I know I entered it because I love my people. And yeah, I'm just so grateful that I left corporate and decided to just put everything into teaching. I imagine, Brother Kwame, I would be so unsatisfied if I was just chasing the paper. And that really is what corporate is about. It is the epitome of capitalism, chasing that paper.
Yes, it is. And I cannot think of any other profession I would do outside of education. I honestly can't. And I tell my wife this all the time. But it's just something that, unless you're in it, you don't fully understand just the energy and the feeling that you get from being in front of the classroom and 30, 40 kids looking right at you. Like you're the show.
Yes.
Like, I know for you, you have lecture hall, so it's probably like 10 times that number. But anyway, well, you get the point. That energy from the students.
Incredible.
That's what drives you to come back every single day. Like,
yes. Yes.
Sanctuary.
Wow. Thank you for that.
Yeah. But yeah, let's talk about love. Like this book right here.
I spill everything. Brother, don't I spill the tea, the coffee, the hot chocolate, the wine?
You went in. You went in. You done told your whole life story up in here. I'm like, yes. But that's what I appreciate about Love from the Vortex is your vulnerability throughout this entire process. But what I also realize is not only do you talk about doing those deep excavations, you embody it. You model it just through the writings in this book, because you go real deep in your processing of different relationships. And just your thought process at different stages of your love life and everything. The way that you formatted it was just beautifully done. I just have to say that, because it really took me to the journey, and I saw the growth as you were, going through, and even the regressions at times too.
Yes.
Like it was very much like up and down. But I think that's the nature of a lot of our relationships when it comes to love. So talk to me about what inspired you to write Love from the Vortex, and walk us through the creative process of putting it together, because I know it took a lot of work, and there was definitely a team of folks that probably consulted with you to get you to put out the best possible piece of art that you could.
Brother, thank you for this question. Yes, there's still about, I would say maybe 60 poems that will probably never see the light of day.
There you go.
This was a project, I want to say, of full liberation. And I did not intend to write a book. I'm going to be honest with you. I wrote these, I've been writing poetry for about 35 years and come to understand that it is the way that I process my life. It is the way that I process the world. It is the way that I dream a world that I want to be different. And so some of these poems earlier in the book are from my journals. I have, at this point, maybe about 17 years worth of journals. And I've kept journals around different themes. And so when I was experiencing very difficult times with my husband, I have a journal for that. Actually, I have about 2 journals for that. So in the early parts, a lot of these poems came out of journals. But the last, I would say, 4 chapters, which was Salvador, Zarin, Tyrone, and other poems, really focus on the last 4 years of my life, and particularly being involved with the lovers in those 4 years. It was a rocky and difficult, but full of growth time. And so the process was simply, things would happen. I was trying to process what was happening. And at one point I was writing 2 or 3 poems a day for like 21 days straight. And I realized that I was reflecting on conversations that I had with the men, that I was reflecting on things that they had said to me, or the way a situation played out. And the poetry was a way of trying to understand it a little bit deeper. Sometimes I would have to write a poem before I got on the phone with them, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't being overly sensitive, if I wasn't bringing in stuff from my past relationships, which we often do. And that's really how it came together. And I would read this to my best friend, these poems, and she just gave me really positive affirmation. And I thought, maybe I should put this together, because this has healed me in so many ways. Perhaps if it comes out in a book, it can heal someone else. So that was the process. And even true to my process, early this morning, I just finished writing a poem about an experience I just had with someone that I was talking to, which I think is now done. Which is just, it was weird the way that it happened. And so I wrote the poem really trying to understand what might have happened. So that might be, it's certainly going to be in the Peace Chronicles, the second book, but that's how it happens for me. So if there's another poetry book, then brother, you must know I am writing through my life. I'm trying to understand what is happening with me. That's my process.
So your poetry is your therapy.
My poetry is my therapy. My poetry is my thinking on the page. My poetry is my vulnerability, my questioning of the self. Yes, it is my therapy. What a beautiful way to put it. And I also have regular therapy too, which actually helps me to talk about in my poetry. I mean, it's all connected. Healing is more than one way to heal. And we need whatever we need to happen to work in our favor to move us towards peace.
And as I was reading it, there were a lot of poems that just spoke to me, but I actually went ahead and just chose 3. If you don't mind me reading some of them while we're together.
Yes.
The first one that really hit me was the one about Zarin, the truth in Black and Blue. And for obvious reasons, because from what I read, I know there was some abuse involved there.
Verbal, but not
verbal abuse. Yeah, verbal abuse involved. But I want to read The Truth in Black and Blue because so many questions came to my mind when I was reading it. So I'm going to go ahead and read.
Okay, let me get with you. Give me the page because, I got to read along.
All right, page 87.
Even though the words are etched on my heart, I still have to read along. I'm there. I'm ready.
All right. And I'll try to read with the right cadence because I want to do it justice.
Oh, it'll be beautiful.
Like, gotta snap my finger. The truth is, had you not spoken of Malcolm in the way that you did, had you not talked of your father and your love for him and his love for Malcolm, I would have made no room for you. If you had not been a Black man, I would have never given you any play, much less let you play with my heart. I'm not quite sure why I opened myself to you, given how I feel about those in blue. Even though you were Black and blue, you were still my choice. I admit something positive has come from this. My loathing has mellowed. I face my own hypocrisy about loving all humankind, except those who wear badges. You challenged this by making me fall in love with you and the sight of you in blue, Black man. Your Blackness overshadowed your blue, but blue is what I was left feeling whenever I talk to you. What's your story? What can I do for you? What are you looking for? I didn't quite know how to answer then, but now, since things have fallen apart, I finally have a response. What's your story?
Right.
What were you looking for? How do you awaken a woman's love, drag her into your world, and destroy all hope? How do you reconcile saying things like, I love you, I will marry you, I love being with you, curse her out, and then walk away? Is that something you learned in police school? Did they teach you to go all in, then pull all out immediately without checking for bloodshed or tears? Where did you learn to treat people as temporary and disposable? Why do you fight others when the enemy is within? I am not the enemy. I chose to love you. If you had not been a Black man, I would have never given you any play, much less let you play with my heart. The truth is, you were blue. And that should have stopped me from the very start.
Wow, that was a beautiful reading, Brother Kwame.
Man. Woo. There are so many themes within those 3 pages. We have to unpack this a little bit. That first paragraph, when you say Malcolm, you're referring to Malcolm X.
Brother Malcolm X.
That was the hook. Oh, you love Brother Malcolm? Okay, all right. You
His
got
father
me.
ran with Malcolm. So
What?
that was a hook for me.
That was the hook.
That was a hook.
All right. But then you talk about the fact that he's a police officer, Black man. And when I look at what's happening right now with so many of our young and even our older, Black and brown brothers and sisters losing their lives to police violence, I'm sure there was some conflict there. There had to be some conflict there. Yes, it's a Black man, but you're wearing a badge. You're wearing that uniform that triggers. That just triggers, so many emotions, right?
Brother, that was the major tension in our relationship. And when we were talking those years, it was like a Black person was being killed. It felt like every 2 weeks. Philando Castile, Michael Brown, the names on and on and on. Eric Garner.
Right.
And each time it was so heated between us. And I knew that it couldn't last because, quite honestly, I had always been on the other side of police. Those folks in my community, some of the students that I taught, even in my own family, being on the other side of the badge. And so I honestly knew, Brother Kwame, from the beginning, and this was even on our first date, I said, I don't know if this is going to work. And then I said a couple of other things, but I walked into it, with my spirit not being settled. But there were so many other things. Certainly his father's connection with Malcolm and the way that he loved Malcolm, and very much the way that I loved Malcolm and other Black ancestors we shared the love for. Deep love of music from the 70s, the 80s. Like I grew up in a spectrum of music from the Ink Spots, to hip hop. I'm a child of the hip hop era. But my brother played all Motown, all sorts of music. We had like the same type of music in common. So that music is a beautiful part of being in love. So there were just other things that we couldn't, the way he loved his mother, the way he talked about his mother, all these things betrothed me to him. But, the policing had snatched his mind in so many ways about his people. And it was the most bizarre thing for him to be a Black man with all of those things I just described, and yet to see our people sometimes believing that they deserve things. It was very hurtful.
I don't want it, and I'm sure it was, but I want to stay on this for a second because there's a part of this poem where you really touch on that, right? And it really hit me too. Hold on. Basically, when you start to talk about like how do you reconcile saying things like I love you, I'll marry you, I love being with you, curse her out, and then walk away. Is that something you learned in police school? Did they teach you to go all in, then pull all out immediately without checking for bloodshed or tears? That part right there. And the reason why that triggered me is because I'm thinking about George Floyd. 8 minutes and 46 seconds. You have a knee on his neck, right? And even though that was a white man who did that, I'm thinking just as a Black police officer who's in the police academy, you're seeing your own people getting killed by the very people that like you're a part of, the very like industry you're a part of.
Yes.
So I'm sure it has to play a role in somebody's mental health. So I'm wondering, as you reflect on your relationship with Zarin, did a part of you feel like, you know what? Maybe he is traumatized by it. Maybe it's the internalized racism that caused him to behave in a way that was verbally abusive towards you. And also the cumulative stress of just being a police officer in general. You're seeing young people getting killed by your own brothers and sisters in blue. How do you reconcile all these different things happen at the same time?
Yes.
That's why I just kept thinking.
Kwame, is like you're right on point. I'll tell you, from the first week we started talking, and we used to be on the phone 3, 4, 5 hours. I want to say that he actually doesn't live in New York. He's in another state that I would frequent all the time. Within that first week, I told him, you need therapy. You need therapy. And it was a resounding thing for me. And he would always say, no, you're my therapist. I'm like, no, I am not a clinician. I can support you. If we're going to do this, I'll support you. But you need therapy for all of the reasons, Kwame, that you just brought up. But part of his, I'm sure, fear, but also this toughness that I write about in another poem, he refused. He would not even think about it. So
Wow.
You're just right on point. It was a lot. It was, as I look back, it was a lot. And one thing I want to say, I always share this when I talk about these men. These men knew that the book was going to come out, and these are not their real names. These are pseudonyms. I asked them to choose a name that they would like, because in the world of social media, you can just trace, a little bit, 15, 20 minutes, and you could easily connect, right? Knowing that he's a police officer, it's ways that you can connect if I use real names. And I'm forever the researcher, but always human. And it wasn't about them being exposed. It was about me telling my story in terms of my experience with them. So I just want to say that all of these names are pseudonyms.
I also want to point out that it's good that you're still in communication with some of your past partners, because a lot of people think when you end a relationship with somebody, it's always like negative or whatever. Sometimes it's just a case where, you know what? Our journeys are going in different paths.
Exactly.
I have no hate towards the person.
Exactly.
We're just not connecting at this present time. Maybe down the road we will. Like Erykah Badu says, maybe I'll see you next lifetime, right? Time is just not right now.
Lifetime.
So, so that's just something that is important for us to realize, that not every ending to a relationship is negative. Like people that I've talked to, people that I used to talk to, like I talk to right now, I still talk to.
Right.
Like we still connect on social media, and they tell me how their families are doing. I tell them how my family's doing. So it's all love, because you learn something from every relationship.
Every relationship.
Everyone.
Hopefully we get better. That's the hope, right? So hopefully when we get better, and hopefully, because Brother Kwame, I know you're married, hopefully all of those previous relationships have taught you, and actually I'd like to ask you a question. What have your previous relationships taught you that you were able to manifest in a positive way in your own marriage?
I think, and I'll go a little bit into it, even with the last relationship I had before I married my wife, it was with a woman who was a little bit older than I was, right? Had preteen children when we started dating. Now the children are grown, mid-20s. They have their own lives. But when we were dating years ago, I was just finishing my grad school. I was still trying to get my teaching certificate and my master's, right? She had already gone through the process. She had kids that were, 10, 12 years old at the time, respectively, had lived her life. But because it was this May, December relationship going on, right? I found myself in a situation where, wow, like this older woman is looking at me like she's interested in me. I don't have anything. I don't have any money. I don't even have a bed. Like I'm sleeping on the floor.
Wow.
Living that minimalist life.
Right.
As many of us do when we first got out of college, like we just trying to survive, right?
Right.
But she saw something in me. So being somebody that was like, what, 24, 25 at the time, you're thinking, wow, like you're the man. Like, wow, like I must, like you start to feel yourself a little bit, right? And we talk about the chapter we talk about playing house with Angel. That was me. That was my relationship with that woman. And even though I had deep feelings for her, because I was still young, she was more mature, obviously. My concept of what a relationship constitutes didn't align with her concept of what that was. So there were some subtle things that I totally missed out on that she was trying to communicate with me. But of course, you know how some of our men do. We don't always look at the signals. We don't always see the signals when they're in front of us. But then when that day comes when your partner's like, we need to end this, you're like, what just happened? Like what did I do? Like what did I do? I thought we were good. Like I'm not cheating on you. Like I'm like literally I was losing myself in that relationship because I thought that I needed to accelerate my maturity process in order to match hers. And as a result, I found myself isolated from, my friends and everybody else who were living their lives like, like normal 20-year-olds do, right? But I felt like I had to be a father figure to her children, even though she never told me to be that. She had said, you know what I mean? Like I thought that was my concept at that time. I thought I had to be that person for her children and I had to be this person for her so that she could look at me in the way that she would look at someone that was around the same age as her. If that makes sense.
Powerful. And that's a lot. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we talk about playing house, like, yeah, we ended up being in the same space together for a couple years. But over that time, things just kind of started to disintegrate gradually to the point where she just said, we just need to end it. And she was the one who told me, Kwame, like you deserve to start a family with somebody and to be in a relationship. She said that. My young self was trying to keep it going because I'm thinking I put in 2 years. I don't want to start from ground zero because I felt like I had invested so much energy in keeping it going.
And love.
The fear of having to start over is what caused me to rebut, that offer to just start with another person.
Wow.
She could have just, she didn't have to do that. She didn't have to do that. Yeah.
Wow. I'm just so touched by everything you shared. I'm touched by your vulnerability. I'm touched by the care and the love and the respect that is still evident because it comes through your voice.
Right. And I don't think, like, you don't throw away the baby with the bathwater, right? There were a lot of great moments in that relationship.
Right.
But I had to remove myself from that space in order to start that reflection process. Because even after we broke up, we were still living under the same roof for 6 more months.
Wow.
Because, we both work in schools. You break up in November, December, school year ends in June. So
that's when life begins for you because things are so chaotic. You can't really do stuff during the school year unless your life is at stake. You're just kind of ride the wave until the summer.
Right. So like during those 6 months, obviously separate rooms.
Yeah.
And she's like living her life. I'm struggling. You know, Monday through Thursday, I'm focused on work. I'm compartmentalizing everything that's going on. But then the weekend comes, she getting ready to go dancing. She's getting ready to chill with, her friends. She getting, she's getting ready, all dressed up, and I'm like, man, trigger. Like,
oh yeah,
I can't. I can't even watch this process.
Wow.
I can't even watch it. But that was the thing that I was going through for those 6 months. And, I tried to, date a few folks, but it's hard to do that when you're still under the same roof as your ex.
Of course. And when your heart's not ready, I think a lot of times, Kwame, that we get out there and our hearts are not ready, or people say, I'm ready for a relationship, I'm ready to get married, but they've not really done the self-work around what that means, because when you hit a bump, then they're ready to run. So, and a lot of times we think, well, let me just start talking to somebody else. And sometimes that helps because it'll help you forget the other person. But like you said, if you're in the same home and your heart is still grieving, it just sometimes brings more pain.
It does. It does. But you hit it right on the nail. I started to talk to other people as a way to get my mind off of my ex.
Sure.
And yeah, unfortunately that backfired. But after a while, as the months passed by, it started to sink in for me, the reality. And, we got to a point where, we were good. Like, we were good. So then July hits, she helps me move into my apartment. Like, she helped me get furniture. She helped me go to the thrift store to get some things for the new house. It's like she was really the homie.
Yes.
And still is to this day. Like, I think I just talked to her
Beautiful.
maybe a couple days ago, and she was showing me pictures of her children and everything. And I think one of them is about to graduate from college. So like it's all good. But the whole point of me sharing this, and my wife knows about all this. So people wondering, like, wow. Like my wife, I told her this even before we started dating. So she knows about the story. They've actually met before, so this is not new information.
Nice.
But it wasn't until I was with myself in my new apartment that I started to do the work on myself, because for the first time, I was by myself. There was no one there to have to cook for me. There was no one there to do these things for me. I had to become self-sufficient.
Yes.
I had to become self-dependent. And it was through that process that I started to realize that, yeah, you know what? I did F up here. I did mess up here. Like, I had to take ownership of that. But it would never have happened if I didn't take the time to be by myself, to be in solitude, to have the time to just process every single aspect of the relationship, all the signals she was trying to share with me. Because when you're in the moment, you don't always give yourself the room to process. Just like as teachers, when you're in the classroom, so many things are happening at once. You don't have the time to sit down and just think through certain things. But when you finally get home and you're able to have that time to reflect,
and it hits you.
It hits you like, whoa, this is what really happened. So that's what it was for me. So to go from that plain house phase where you talk about Angel, to then when you get to Tyrone, where it sounds like you know who you are at this point. You've evolved. That was me. My Tyrone phase was when I was by myself.
Right.
In introspection, thinking about what I need to do for the next relationship. And that's the work that I put in. And, I casually dated still and, did some things. But eventually I met my wife. And as soon as I met her, I knew I was going to marry her. I knew because the signals were there.
Yes. And
The
you were not
signals were
ignoring
there.
them. You were not afraid. You were not ignoring them. And you'd done enough self-work to recognize them. Powerful, Kwame.
But also been hurt so many times that you just get to a point where you just know who you are.
Yes.
And that leads me to another poem I gotta read, which speaks to this.
I love this. I love it. What page? I want to read. I love hearing you read it, reading along.
122, commitment.
I am there.
Right. And it's really short, but basically, I know that I'm ready to love you because I'm prepared to lose you. So the part where you say I'm prepared to lose you is not that you want to lose this person, is that you are so secure in who you are as a human that, okay, I don't need a man to validate me, right? I don't need a validation from another person. I've already validated myself because I'm full.
Mm-hmm.
I'm whole.
Mm-hmm.
So I reached that point in my own journey. So So I want to know from you, when you said that, was that the same feeling for you? Just this idea of your self-love being sufficient enough to where if I don't ever get married or if I'm not in a relationship for a while, like I'm still good.
Brother, yes, it was two things. It was all of that. And it was also recognizing that as you could love someone so much, but people still have the choice to leave. They can leave
Yes.
at any moment. And so every time we decide to enter a loving relationship, it's at the risk that at any moment they can go. So it was those two things in mind, and me coming to understand that it doesn't matter how nice I am, how sweet I am, even how much I love this person, that person, depending on where they are, how they receive my love, how they interpret my love, it might trigger something that they feel they have to go.
My
And
God.
that is what it means to love, to always be prepared to know that you will lose that love. And so you must have the love of self so secure that you do not break down every time, someone decides that leaving is the best thing for them to do.
That's the part that spoke to me. That right there. Because in past relationships, and I'm okay in saying this because I've taken the time to reflect.
Yes.
Literally, I was the doormat, right? I was the nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes
People don't appreciate it. They
their
can't.
women don't appreciate nice
They
guys.
want the bad boys. I don't know why.
Right?
I don't know if that's
They
connected
like the bad
to,
boys. And
I
I'm
don't know
like,
if it's,
I've never been a bad boy.
but I don't know if it's connected to what they're used to. And so by the time they come along and they get love from you or love from me, that is so open, they, number one, think I don't deserve it. Or two, this can't be true. I think that it's just such, cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
That they don't know what to do with it. I've come to understand that. I really have. I've come to understand that, as quirky and weird as it sounds, because everybody wants to be loved. And don't you want to be honored? But no, people have not built themselves up to that in their own work to even be able to accept it sometimes, Kwame. And so then we make the decision, I am not going to change. I am not going to become a monster, a beast, or speak to you a particular way because that's what you're used to. No, that's work that you have to do. And if that is the love that you're looking for, that's not the love you're going to get from me. So then that means that we have to part our ways, because I'm not going to become something I'm not just for you to love me. I love myself too much for that.
that was the difference. That was the turning point for me when I started to prioritize myself.
Yes.
And my needs, because sometimes when you're in a relationship, especially those first few dates, you're trying to impress. You're trying to leave a good impression because you want them to come back for date number 2, date number 3,
right,
and 4, and so on. But in the process, you shortchange yourself. And I realized that about myself. So once I realized it, I then corrected it. So when you went ahead and wrote that whole list, right? I'm not going to read the poem, but it's basically where you pretty much say, listen, I want this, I want that, I want all these different things.
Right.
I had my own checklist that I had developed, but it came after years of breakups and hardships.
Absolutely.
That's what led to the checklist. If I didn't go through those things, I wouldn't have known what I wanted. See, so it's all a process. That's why I'm always one that values every relationship I've been in, even if it was one with somebody who hurt me.
Yeah, sometimes especially so.
Yeah. You honor the time because you gain lessons. You gain knowledge. Like,
brother, I have to tell you, this has been the most in-depth, provocative conversation I've had around Love from the Vortex. I'm so grateful to you for sharing of your life, but in doing so, like really connecting with my sentiment and my heart in these poems. So I just want to thank you. This is definitely the most in-depth, nuanced conversation that I've had around these poems, and I appreciate it.
And this is what we talked about off air. Like sometimes the conversations get real like that. This wasn't part of the script. This wasn't part of the script, but guess what? Here we are.
You gotta be willing to go there. And I told you I was willing to go there, and you have gone there. And I just hope that whoever listens to this, if they stay with us long enough, right? However you're going to edit this, I don't know. But if they stay with us long enough with this, I hope that they're blessed by it. I hope that there are brothers and men who stay long enough with this and listen to that story that you told and how you share what you learned. Because this is how we change things. Being willing to give of ourselves.
Yeah, we have to. And the work is ongoing. It is ongoing. It doesn't end. Whew. I feel like I just had a whole therapy session.
Can I tell you, I'm playing with I'm pulling my hair back. I'm sweating over here. I'm like, oh Lord, shoot.
Yes. But I do have I have one more question before we get into the lightning round.
All right. Lightning round. Let me get ready for that.
Yeah. So my question is, first off, you have so many books coming out. It's hard to keep up with you these days. But I want to talk about the Peace Chronicles. So I know that's coming out very soon. So can you just share with us a little bit about the Peace Chronicles and what that project is about?
Absolutely. Coming out of the vortex and straight into peace. But I'll tell you, it wasn't linear. So the first chapter, there's 4 chapters. The first is called, first there's a prologue and epilogue. The first is called Residual Detachments, where I actually pick up off of a new kind of betrayal from Tyrone. I won't talk about it too much here because, we're getting to the end of our time, but suffice it to say, as I mentioned, my process is to write through my pain and find my peace. Those are those poems in there. There's also a second chapter called Father Apart, where I reconcile a lot of things with my father, particularly after his death. It's only 3 poems, but it's like a small, a medium, and a really long one. The third chapter is called Peacemaking. And you just see how I am literally writing through my peace and coming to peace about relationships and love. And then the fourth is called Meta Poems. Much like the Vipassana poems in Love from the Vortex, they're these short, quippy quippy, if that's a word, poems where I offer my meta, I offer my piece to the reader. And then there's an epilogue talking about where I'm from, where I pay homage, of course, to my South Bronx neighborhood. But that also, all of that fell out of me too. And I began writing, trying to deal with the betrayal and the fact that he had betrayed me with someone that I knew for over 10 years and at one point had mentored. So yeah, that's the Peace Chronicles.
Wow. And I'm gonna have to put that on cue with a whole bunch of other books that I plan on purchasing at some point, but I'm going broke by the minute.
Thank you. And it's a but brother, you know what? It's a smaller book. It's only about 68, 70 poems. I also intend to do an Audible album. You know, Love from the Vortex has an Audible album that is set to my voice. So it took me like 48 hours to read the entire book. I'm grateful for my sound engineer, King Willie Mosqueda, who created original sounds and original music. He's playing the guitar. Wow. He's like a Latin Grammy-nominated artist. So he's playing the piano. He's playing the guitar on some of it. But it's all original sound making and music. And so that is on Amazon for as low as price as I possibly could. So I think it's like $6.99. But if you're like a Audible member, you can get it for like $1 credit or $4. And that was purposeful, to keep it at the lowest price possible because I want love to spread.
Wow. I might have to tell my wife because she's an Audible member.
Oh, yes. Please
use that credit.
You know what? Use that credit. And if she doesn't have a credit, I think that I have a credit because Audible gives you a certain amount of free passes. You let me know and I'll send one to her and to you.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. I got you. I got y'all.
Wow. Thank you so much, sister. You've already given so much. I mean, I couldn't just take more from you.
No, it's my pleasure. And especially for your wife too. And, you know, I want sisters. Of course, I want brothers to read it, but I want sisters. And what you experience with the book, I would want her to have that same experience, to get an opportunity to journey through some of her past loves. Particularly now that y'all are in this beautifully secure, loving relationship. Why not take the journey?
Yeah. And we actually talked about reading the book together. This might be the book right here. This might be the book.
Thank you. And many couples do. So I hope so. And I would love to even be in conversation with the two of y'all if you ever want to like do something together on Zoom, privately, whatever, just conversation. I would love to.
Sounds good. We might have to take up on that offer.
Spread the love. Spread the love.
Spread the love. So let's go ahead and go into the lightning round.
Okay,
so
all right. Let me get myself set up. Let me get my
ready.
hair. Let me get my hair right. Let me sit up straight. I'm ready.
All right. So just a few questions. First question is, what are you doing for self-care these days? Favorite self-care activity?
Ooh, prayer and meditation. Easy.
Awesome. One book that you're currently reading?
Ooh, I am reading for probably the third time All About Love by Bell Hooks. I'm also reading Empty Bottles Full of Memories, something like that, by R.H. Shin. It's a poetry book.
Outside of your poems from Love from the Vortex, what's the one poem that's had the greatest impact on your life?
Oh, Maya Angelou, Phenomenal Woman. That's easy.
If you can invite 3 influential figures, dead or alive, who would they be?
Can I have 4?
I'll give you an extra one.
Okay,
I'll give you an extra one.
Okay, thank you. Malcolm, James Baldwin, Toni Morrison, and Jesus Christ. I want to know a little bit about that journey, particularly the last 3 years of his life as an itinerant preacher. I'm interested in that.
Awesome. All right, I want you to complete the following prompts with one word. Poetry is?
Life.
Love is?
The answer.
Sure is.
It sure is.
And who would you like to see on this podcast?
Who would I like to see? Dr. Bettina Love. Has she been on?
No, but could you help a brother get her on?
I would do my best. Absolutely. Certainly.
She's busy.
I know. I would love to have her on this show. So I'll work with you. We'll work on it offline and see if we can squeeze into her schedule. I think she would be fired and just dynamic.
Yes, because I mean that episode just be a whole conversation itself. So many questions. Whole word right there.
I'll help you work on it, brother. I promise. Yeah, that would be my dream for this show.
Yes. But, Sister Yolanda, thank you so much for taking this time. This has been therapeutic for me.
Same here.
I knew the conversation would be phenomenal, but this has gone even beyond those expectations. So I appreciate you for your time, because I know you're into a lot of things right now, a lot of things. So just any time that you're able to spare is just greatly appreciated.
I'm grateful too, brother. Listen, this has been healing for me. I'm grateful. I just hope that your audience members will listen and learn and be blessed by this, because I certainly was this afternoon. This evening, afternoon, whenever you're tuning in, time is, I don't know.
Yes.
Elusive. Time is elusive anyway. That's another podcast conversation.
There you go. And then real quickly, how can people connect with you on social media so they can support your work, your books, and just your scholarship, everything? Let people know how they can reach out to you.
Thank you. Thank you. At Ruiz Sealey on Twitter, at Yoli_Sealey-Ruiz. You see my name back there over here. It's hard to point in the right direction. Facebook, I have a Facebook poetry page and my regular OG Facebook page, or you can just Google me and my emails pop up. Please visit with me. Also on my website, YolandaSealey-Ruiz.com, and you'll see a lot of the events I'm doing around the city on Zoom, and now we're starting in person. So thank you for that. Come and visit with me.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. Yolanda Sealey-Ruiz. Thank you again, sister, for taking this time. And this will definitely not be the last. I can already feel that.
I welcome it. Bye, y'all.
All right. Have a good rest of the day.
You too. All of you.
All right, people. So we're ending another phenomenal episode of IDTALK4ED Educators Live. And as I always tell you all, I wish you all a good morning, good night, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And we're going to do this again another time. Peace out, everybody.